My dad gave my stepsister the company and watched me disappear. I stayed quiet, kept every secret, and waited until one file destroyed her crown and everything she stole. My name is Elowen Rusk, and I was 33 years old when my father handed my life's work to my stepsister in front of 200 people. He stood under blue winter lights, lifted a glass of sparkling wine, and told the room that Blue Ridge packaging and fixtures needed a leader with grace, loyalty, and vision. Then he turned toward Veyra, my stepsister, and smiled like he was looking at the future itself. Everyone clapped. Employees, bankers, vendors, family friends, even the local business reporter near the back wall. My husband, Thorne, found my hand under the table and held it. I did not cry. I did not stand up. I did not beg my father to remember who had kept his company alive when the trucks stopped moving, when the old machines failed, when the bank started calling. I only looked at Veyra's silver crown pin shining on her white jacket and thought, wear it while you can. What nobody in that room knew was that I had spent 9 months building a file with her name on it. Not a messy file. Not angry notes written in the middle of the night. A clean file. Dates, invoices, login records, missing safety reports, bank transfers, photographs, witness statements, and one email my father never thought I would find. They had called me jealous. They had called me difficult. My stepmother had said the same quiet sentence so many times that it almost became part of the walls around me. Do not turn pain into drama, Elowen. But pain was not what I had in my hands. Drama was not what I had hidden in my red binder. By the time Veyra walked toward that stage to accept the company, I had proof. This is how it started. Blue Ridge Packaging and Fixtures sat on the west side of Asheville, North Carolina, close enough to the mountains that the morning fog sometimes dropped over the factory roof like a gray blanket. The first building was old red brick, built long before my father bought it. The second warehouse had a metal roof that popped in the summer heat. The third facility, Warehouse 3, stood near the French Broad River with loading docks facing a narrow service road and a line of pine trees behind the employee parking lot. We made custom packaging, retail displays, shipping crates, and special fixtures for stores that wanted their products to look expensive before anyone touched them. It was not glamorous work, but it was honest work. Cardboard dust, machine oil, forklift beeps, packing tape, saw blades, wet pavement, early trucks, late invoices. That was the world I grew up inside. My father, Derek Rusk, founded the company 28 years before that winter gala. He started with one rented cutter, a used box truck, and 4 workers who trusted him because he was louder than his fear. He was good in the early days. I will never take that from him. He knew every employee's name. He knew which machine had a weak belt. He could walk through the factory and tell from the sound if the die cutter was not aligned right. When I was little, I used to sit in his office after school and draw mountains on the back of old packing lists while he took calls. He would tell people, "My girl knows this place better than some grown men." I believed him then. I thought being seen as a child meant I would be trusted as an adult. I did not yet understand that my father loved my usefulness more than he respected my mind. I started working at Blue Ridge the summer I turned 16. Not in an office. My father said if I wanted to understand the business, I had to start where the work was real. So I labeled pallets, checked inventory sheets, swept cardboard scraps, and carried cold water bottles to the loading dock in July. At 22, after college, I came back full-time. I learned scheduling first, then vendor management, then safety reporting, then client contracts. By 28, I was operations director. I knew which clients paid late, which suppliers padded freight charges, which warehouse manager could be trusted with a rush order, and which equipment needed replacement before it broke at the worst possible time. When our largest retail client threatened to leave because of 3 late shipments in 1 quarter, I rebuilt the entire delivery schedule myself over 1 weekend. That client stayed. My father shook my hand in his office and said, "Reliable. That is what you are, Elowen." I waited for more. He turned back to his computer. Reliable became the box he put me in. If a delivery failed, I fixed it. If payroll had a delay, I stayed late until the bank file cleared. If a machine inspection came back with a warning, I called the repair company myself. I was allowed to carry the weight. I was not allowed to wear the crown. That was the quiet rule of my family. My father did not say it directly. He was too smart for that. He praised me when no one could hear it. He used my work when everyone depended on it. But when there was a camera, a room, a toast, or a public announcement, he looked past me. Veyra Lorne came into our lives when I was 18. Her mother Maribel married my father 1 year after my own mother died. Veyra was 16 then, pretty in the way people notice before they know anything else about you. She had smooth dark hair, a soft voice, and eyes that changed depending on who she was speaking to. Around adults, she was tender. Around men with money, she was curious. Around me, she was bored. She hated the factory. She said the smell of glue stayed in her clothes. She once came to a company picnic wearing white sandals and asked if the gravel lot was the actual parking area. I remember because one of our shipping supervisors, Nola Brinwick, looked at me from across the picnic table and raised one eyebrow. We both knew Veyra did not belong there. What I did not know was that belonging did not matter if you looked good enough standing beside power. For years, Veyra stayed away from the business. She went to school, left school, started a lifestyle account online, worked briefly for an events company, then came back to Asheville with a certificate in brand strategy and a new last name on her business cards. Veyra Lorne Rusk. My father loved it. He said the company needed a fresh face. He said packaging was changing. He said old clients were not enough. I did not disagree with all of that. A business does need to grow. But growth without discipline is just a beautiful leak. I asked for a written plan, measurable goals, budget limits, vendor reviews. My father waved his hand like I had brought rain to a picnic. "Your sister understands people," he said. "She is my stepsister," I said before I could stop myself. His eyes cooled. "She is family." That was the first time I understood how the word family could be used like a locked door. Veyra was given a new department called Brand Growth and Community Partnerships. It sounded important, which was the point. She got 2 assistants, a renovated office with glass walls, a company credit card, and a budget larger than the maintenance budget for Warehouse 3. I got a reminder to keep operations lean. Veyra hosted ribbon cuttings, took pictures with charity directors, ordered blue and silver banners, and posted about honoring the workers who build America from behind the scenes. The workers in those pictures rarely knew her name. She knew how to stand in front of them. That was enough for my father. 9 months before the gala, we had dinner at my father's house on a cold March evening. The house sat on a hill outside Asheville, with long windows facing the mountains, and a stone fireplace my father used, even when the weather did not require it. There were 5 of us at the table. My father, Maribel, Veyra, Thorne, and me. The dining room was too formal for family dinner. Crystal glasses, linen napkins, candles low enough to flatter everyone's face. Maribel always set a table like she was expecting a photographer to appear from the hallway. My father waited until dessert to start. He pushed his plate away, folded his hands, and said, "I have been thinking about the company's future." I already knew where this was going. Thorne's knee touched mine under the table. Just a small, steady pressure. Father continued, "Blue Ridge cannot stay the same forever. We need a public face, someone who can move us into the next chapter." I looked at him. Operations is the next chapter. Our equipment is aging. Warehouse 3 needs a new pallet lift before summer. The safety review is overdue. Veyra smiled like I had handed her a perfect chance. That is exactly why brand matters, Elowen. People do not only buy what you make, they buy what you stand for. I kept my voice calm. People also expect us to make the product on time without hurting anyone. The table went quiet. Maribel lowered her fork slowly. She never slammed anything. She never raised her voice. Her anger wore perfume and pearls. "Do not turn pain into drama, Elowen," she said. There it was. Her favorite sentence. Soft enough to sound kind, sharp enough to cut. "I am talking about safety," I said. "You are talking about control," Maribel replied. Veyra touched the small silver crown pin on her blouse. It was new then. Tiny, polished, almost childish if it had not looked so pleased with itself. My father had given it to her after her first charity campaign. He had said, "Every brand needs a little royalty." She wore it like a promise. That night, on the drive home, Thorne did not speak for several minutes. He knew I needed silence before words. He was good that way. Thorne Vale was a fire investigator before he became an insurance compliance consultant. He understood buildings, reports, risk, and the strange way people lied after something burned. He did not push. He waited until we reached the highway. "She is going to give Veyra more control," he said. "My father is going to give her everything if she keeps smiling like that." "Then you need to protect yourself." I looked out the window at the dark road. "From my own family?" "Especially from them," he said. I wanted to tell him he was wrong. I wanted to tell him that my father could be unfair but not dangerous, blind but not careless, proud but not corrupt. I wanted to believe there was a line he would never cross. 9 months later, I would find out exactly how much hope can cost. The first clue landed on my desk on a Tuesday morning in April. It looked boring. Most important things do at first. A vendor invoice from Crown Line Market Works for $186,400. Description: Community Brand Activation Materials, Quarter 2. The invoice had Veyra's department code, a project number, and a digital approval stamp with my initials. ER approved. The system said I had reviewed it 2 days earlier, at 7:18 p.m. I stared at those initials for a long time. I did not remember approving that invoice because I had not approved it. On that date, at that time, I had been at home with Thorne, eating leftover chicken soup and watching him replace the battery in our smoke detector because the little chirp was driving us both insane. I remembered it clearly because I had laughed when he said, "Fire investigators are very romantic. We bring safety and ladders." I had not been in the company approval system. I had not opened Crown Line's file. I had never even heard of Crown Line Market Works. I ran the vendor check. Their listed address was a mailbox in Knoxville. No warehouse, no production facility, no staff directory. The website was one page with stock photos and phrases that sounded like they had been poured from a can. Strategic visibility, community-centered growth, authentic brand touchpoints. I checked delivery records. Nothing received. I checked warehouse intake. Nothing logged. I checked event photos from Veyra's recent community campaign. The banners in the photos did not match the invoice description. The booth backdrop looked rented. The custom employee recognition wall listed on the invoice did not exist in any of our buildings. I did not call Veyra. I did not walk into my father's office. I printed the invoice, the approval log, the vendor profile, and the delivery records showing nothing received. Then I opened the bottom drawer of my desk and took out a red binder I used for safety reviews. On the front, the label said, Vendor Safety Review. Nobody in my family would willingly open a binder with a title that boring. That was the first page. For 2 weeks, I watched. That was harder than confronting. Confronting gives you the comfort of noise. Watching makes you live with what you know. Veyra came and went through the office with coffee in one hand and her phone in the other, laughing with clients, calling my father D when she wanted something, touching that crown pin when she felt admired. My father walked her through the factory one morning with 2 local reporters, introducing her as our next generation of leadership. She wore closed-toe shoes for the cameras and asked a machine operator how long he had been with the brand. His name was Pruitt Hask, and he had worked there for 19 years. He looked at her, confused, and said, I work in cutting. I kept adding pages to the binder. Crown Line had been paid 3 times in 6 months. $186,400. $241,000. $312,700. Different project names. Same vague descriptions. Community brand activation, employee recognition rollout, safety culture, refresh. Every invoice moved through Veyra's department. Everyone had missing delivery records. 2 of them carried my digital initials. One carried the initials of a warehouse manager who had retired before the approval date. When I showed Thorne the binder at our kitchen table, he read quietly. That was one of the things I trusted about him. He did not react before he understood. He turned each page, checked dates, looked at the approval logs, then sat back. This is not a branding problem, he said. I know. This is fraud. The words sat between us. Heavy, plain, unavoidable. Maybe her assistant processed something wrong, I said, even though I did not believe it. Thorne looked at me gently. One mistake is possible. 3 payments, false approvals, no delivery records, and a mailbox vendor is not a mistake. I rubbed my forehead. If I take this to my father, he will say I am jealous. Then do not take him feelings, Thorne said. Take him facts, and before you take him anything, make sure the facts cannot disappear. He reached for one page and tapped the digital approval log. Also, Elowen, if they used your initials without permission, they are not just stealing money. They are building a path to blame you. That sentence changed the way I looked at the binder. Until then, I had been thinking like a daughter. Hurt. Angry. Trying to prove I was not imagining things. After that night, I started thinking like an operations director. If my initials were in the system, my name was part of the chain. If the vendor was fake, I was already close to the damage. If anyone asked questions later, Veyra could smile, tilt her head, and say, Elowen approved it. The next morning, I began building a second record outside the company system. Nothing stolen, nothing hacked, only documents I was authorized to access as operations director. Vendor approvals, delivery logs, maintenance records, budget transfers, department codes. I printed copies, I saved PDFs, I wrote down dates, I kept each page in order. The red binder grew slowly. Not fast enough to panic. Fast enough to prove a pattern. Then Warehouse 3 almost killed a man. It happened in May, just after lunch, on a humid day when the air inside the building felt heavier than cardboard dust. A pallet lift jammed halfway down with a loaded crate on it. Jory Pell, one of our floor leads, had stepped close to check the side rail when the lift dropped 8 inches without warning. Not enough to crush him, enough to slam the crate into the guard frame and send metal pieces across the floor. One piece cut his forearm. Another hit the concrete where his foot had been seconds earlier. When I got the call, I drove from the main office to Warehouse 3 in 8 minutes. Jory was sitting on a folding chair near the break room with a towel wrapped around his arm. He was pale but awake. The machine was locked out. The floor smelled like hot metal. I spoke to the shift supervisor, photographed the equipment, and pulled the maintenance record on my tablet. The record said the pallet lift had been inspected and repaired 3 weeks earlier. Vendor, Crown Line Market Works. Approval, ER. For a moment, the noise of the warehouse faded. Forklift beeps, fans, voices, everything moved far away. Crown Line was a branding vendor. A fake branding vendor, as far as I could tell. They did not repair industrial pallet lifts. They did not inspect safety rails. They did not replace hydraulic lines. But the system showed a completed repair, a closed safety ticket, and my approval. I looked at Jory's bandaged arm and felt something inside me go still. Money was one thing. Lies were one thing. But this was a worker's body. This was a man who had 2 daughters, a mortgage, and a habit of bringing a peach cobbler to the company cookout every September. This was not family politics. This was danger with a signature. Back at the office, I pulled the original safety complaints for Warehouse 3. The system showed 1 complaint marked resolved. That was wrong. I remembered at least 3 reports about that lift. I remembered because I had asked for the repair quote myself. I searched again. Nothing. The other complaints were gone. At 5:42 that afternoon, Nola Brinwick came to my office and closed the door behind her. Nola had worked in payroll and HR for 17 years. She wore simple cardigans, kept peppermint candies in her desk, and knew more about the company than most executives, because every employee eventually told payroll the truth. She stood in front of my desk with a manila folder held against her chest. "You did not approve that Warehouse 3 repair," she said. I looked up slowly. "Why do you say that?" "Because you were the one who told me never to close a safety ticket without a repair photo." I said nothing. Nola placed the folder on my desk. "These are copies of the complaints. I kept them because the system has been acting strange. 3 reports. Same lift, same warning, all submitted before the accident." I opened the folder. There they were. Employee statements, dates, photos. One note from Jory himself saying the lift jerked when lowering heavy crates. Another from a night shift worker saying the warning light flickered. Another from the warehouse supervisor requesting urgent repair. "Who removed them?" I asked. "I do not know," Nola said. "But the closed ticket came through Veyra's department for budget tracking." "Brand Growth handled a safety ticket?" Nola's mouth tightened. "That is why I made copies." I touched the papers, and my fingers felt cold. Nola did not hand me paper. She handed me the part of the company they had tried to erase. "Why bring this to me?" I asked. She looked almost offended. "Because you are the one who shows up when something breaks." That nearly broke me, not because it was dramatic, but because it was true. Not my father, not Veyra, not Mary Bell with her soft voice and perfect table settings. Me. I was the one people called when the loading dock flooded, when payroll glitched, when a worker got hurt, when a client threatened to leave. I was the emergency number for a company my father was preparing to give away. After Nola left, I locked my office door and added the safety reports to the binder. Then I pulled the digital approval record again. The Warehouse 3 repair ticket had been approved using my credentials at 9:42 p.m. on April 28th. I opened my calendar. That night, Thorne and I had been at Mission Hospital visiting his aunt after surgery. I had the parking receipt in my wallet. Thorne had a text from his cousin thanking us for coming. My phone location history showed me at the hospital. The hospital visitor log would show the same. I printed the login record. Then I requested the internal IP log from IT for a routine security review. That was within my authority. The next day, IT sent it over without question. The approval had been entered from the network access point outside Veyra's office. I read the line 3 times. Then I printed it and put it in the binder. That was the day my anger changed shape. Before, it had been hot and personal. Why her? Why not me? Why could my father not see what I had done? After the IP log, the anger became cold, useful, focused. They had not only ignored me, they had used me. They had placed my name on missing repairs and fake invoices, and one of my workers had almost paid for it with his body. In June, I asked Orson Tabb to meet me at a diner 20 minutes outside Asheville. Orson owned a minority share in Blue Ridge and had been part of the company since the second warehouse opened. Before that, he had worked as a supply chain lawyer in Atlanta. He was 59, thin, dry, and difficult to impress. He did not waste words. My father respected him because Orson had money. He disliked him because Orson asked questions. The diner had cracked red booths, strong coffee, and one waitress who called everyone honey without meaning anything by it. I arrived first with no binder, just a notebook. Orson came in wearing a brown coat and a tired expression, like he had already guessed half the reason I called. He sat down and said, "This is not about lunch." "No." "Good. The food here is terrible." Despite everything, I almost smiled. I did not tell him everything. Not yet. I asked careful questions. What happens if a department approves payments to a vendor with no delivery record? What happens if safety funds are moved into marketing categories? What happens if digital approvals are forged? Orson listened without touching his coffee. Finally, he said, "Are you asking as an operations director or as a daughter?" I looked at him. Does the answer change? It changes how dangerous this is for you. I looked down at my notebook. Orson leaned back. If you are building a record, build it clean. Do not guess. Do not threaten. Do not touch files you have no right to access. Do not warn the person who may destroy evidence, and do not fight them in a room where they control the story. That sounded so close to what Thorne had told me that I felt the truth of it settle in. What room do they not control? I asked. The one with documents, Orson said. The one with bank covenants. The one with insurance obligations. The one with workplace safety rules. Families can bend a dinner table. They have a harder time bending a record. Before we left, he said one more thing. Every family business has 2 books, Elowen. The one they show the bank, and the one they hide from the daughter who reads too well. I did not confirm anything. He did not ask me to. But when I drove back to the office, I knew I was no longer collecting proof only for myself. I was building something that could survive my family's version of the truth. Summer moved in, heavy and bright. Veyra became more visible. Her office filled with flowers, sample boards, printed mock-ups, and framed photos from community events. My father started bringing her into client lunches. Morabelle started calling her our bridge to the future. The phrase made my teeth hurt. Veyra posted photos from the factory with captions about legacy and care. In one photo, she stood beside Jory Pell 2 weeks after his accident, smiling with one hand on his shoulder. The caption said, "Proud to support the people who keep Blue Ridge moving." Jory's bandage was still visible. I saved the screenshot. By August, Crown Line had received over $700,000. Some of the payments were hidden inside campaign budgets. Some were attached to safety culture work. One was listed as Employee Appreciation Installation, but the only new thing installed that month was a cheap banner in the cafeteria with a misspelled word. Commitment had one too many T's. Pruitt Hask circled it with a marker before anyone from Veyra's team noticed. The banner came down the next day. Crown Line still kept the money. I found another problem in September. A warehouse repair budget had been reduced by $94,000, and the same amount appeared 3 days later under brand growth as Regional Visibility Consulting. That consulting invoice went to Crown Line. The approval chain showed Veyra, then Maribel as Foundation Liaison, then my initials again as Operations Review. I had never seen it. Maribel's name in the chain made me sit back from my desk. Until then, I had thought she was protecting Veyra emotionally. Now I saw something worse. She was helping move money. Not directly, maybe. Not with a loud signature. But her foundation role created a bridge between charity campaigns and company branding expenses. Veyra walked across that bridge with Crown Line invoices in her hand. That evening at my father's house, Maribel pulled me aside near the kitchen while Veyra and my father laughed in the living room. She touched my arm, the way she always did when she wanted control to look like comfort. "You seem tense lately," she said. "I have been busy." "You have always been busy. This feels different." I looked at her hand on my arm until she removed it. She smiled softly. "Veyra's role is growing. I know that may be painful for you." "Safety reports disappearing is painful," I said. For 1 second, her face did not move. That was how I knew the words had landed. Then she sighed. "Do not turn pain into drama, Elowen." I wanted to ask her if Jory's cut arm was drama. I wanted to ask her if forged initials were drama. I wanted to ask her how many missing reports it took before pain became evidence. But I said nothing. Silence was no longer surrender. Silence was storage. In October, my father announced that the Founders' Winter Gala would be larger than usual. He wanted a formal event at the Alderhall Conservatory, a glass event hall outside the city with mountain views and old stone arches. Employees, investors, major clients, vendors, and press would be invited. A celebration of legacy and future, the invitation draft said. I saw it on Veyra's desk when I passed her office. The words were printed in blue ink, legacy and future. My father's favorite disguise for control. Around the same time, Veyra began acting sweeter toward me. That was new and almost funny. She brought me coffee once, wrong order. She complimented my jacket, which she had once called practical. She asked if I was excited for the gala. I said yes because no was too honest. One afternoon, she stopped at my office door and looked at the red binder on my shelf. "Still doing safety reviews?" she asked. "Always." She laughed lightly. "You really do love the unglamorous side of things." "Someone should." Her smile thinned. "You know, Elowen, Dad values what you do, but not every leader has to know every bolt in the floor." "No," I said, "but a leader should care when one comes loose." For a moment the mask slipped. Not fully, just enough. Her eyes hardened. Then she touched the crown pin on her blouse and smiled again. "I hope you enjoy the gala." "I plan to." She walked away. That night, I took the red binder home for the first time. It was too thick to hide in my desk now. Thorne cleared the kitchen table while I laid out the sections. Crown Line invoices, payment records, missing delivery logs. Forged approvals. IP access points, safety complaints. Warehouse 3 incident report. Maribel Foundation links. Screenshots from Veyra's posts. Lorne stood beside me, reading slowly. "This is enough to start a formal review," he said. "Not enough to stop the transition." "What transition?" I looked at him. His face changed. "Your father is going to announce her. At the gala. Are you sure?" "Yes." He pulled out a chair and sat. "Then you need one thing that connects your father to the cover." I did not want him to be right. Even after everything, there was a small, weak part of me that still wanted my father to be only blind. Blind could maybe be forgiven. Blind could maybe wake up. But involved was different. Involved meant he had seen the smoke and closed the door. The answer came 2 weeks later after a late board preparation meeting. My father had asked me to pull operational risk summaries for the fourth quarter. Some of the older files were stored in his private office because he still liked paper copies. "Digital fails when you need it most," he always said. I had access to those operational files. I had opened that cabinet many times before with his permission, usually while he was traveling or in meetings. That night, he had left early for a donor dinner with Maribel and Veyra. I stayed behind to finish the risk packet. His office smelled like leather, coffee, and old paper. The walls held framed photos from company milestones: first warehouse, first $1 million client, first factory expansion. I was in some of them, usually near the side, holding a folder or standing behind a group of men. Veyra was in the newest photo, centered beside my father, silver crown pin bright against her jacket. The cabinet key was in the top drawer behind a small wooden box of business cards. I took it, opened the cabinet, and found the operational folder I needed. As I pulled it out, another folder slid forward and dropped against the drawer front. VLR transition. Sensitive. VLR. Veyra Lorne Rusk. I stood still for a long moment. My heartbeat was loud in my ears. The folder was in the same cabinet as operational risk files related to the gala transition. As operations director, I had authority to review transition risk documents. I told myself that twice before I opened it. Inside were printed memos, a draft announcement, a proposed title structure, and a timeline. Veyra would become executive president after the gala. Within 6 months, my father would move into chairman role. I would remain operations director. Same title, same box, same weight. Then I found the email. It was printed on white paper, folded once, as if my father had carried it before filing it away. From Derek Rusk to Veyra Lorne Rusk. Subject: Crown Line and Elowen. The first line made my hand tighten. Keep Elowen out of the Crown Line accounts until after the gala. I read the rest slowly. She is asking too many operational questions. Once the title is yours, she will not have standing to challenge brand side decisions. I will handle Orson if he pushes. Do not discuss this with staff. I read it once. Then again. The words did not change. My father knew. Maybe not every invoice. Maybe not every forged approval. Maybe not how close Jory Pell came to being crushed under a broken lift. But he knew enough. He knew Crown Line could not survive my questions. He knew Veyra needed protection from me. And instead of asking why his operations director was worried, instead of asking why his daughter was finding holes in his company, he told Veyra to keep me away until the crown was on her head. I photographed the email, the folder label, and the transition timeline. Then I put every page back exactly as I had found it. I returned the key to the drawer, closed the cabinet, and stood in the middle of my father's office while the building hummed around me. Through the wall, I could hear the low sound of the factory ventilation system, A sound I had known since childhood. A sound that used to make me feel safe. That night, it sounded like a warning. I drove home with the photos on my phone and the red binder on the passenger seat. Thorne was waiting at the kitchen table. He did not ask if I had found something. He saw my face and stood up. I handed him my phone. He read the email. His jaw tightened. "This is the link," he said. I nodded. "This is your father choosing the cover." I looked down at the red binder. It sat between us like a living thing now. Not just paper, not just proof. 9 months of small lies, missing reports, fake payments, and quiet warnings. For a long time, I said nothing. Then I sat down and opened the binder to the first page. Crownline Market Works. $186,400. Community brand activation materials. My initials forged beside a lie. I thought about my father calling me reliable. I thought about Veyra touching that silver crown pin. I thought about Maribel's voice telling me not to turn pain into drama. I thought about Jory's bandaged arm and Nola's folder and Orson's warning about the room where families control the story. That night, I stopped asking why my father could not see me. I finally saw him clearly. Veyra had stolen from the company. Maribel had helped smooth the path. But my father had opened the door, pointed to the hiding place, and told them to keep me outside until the crown was secure. I closed the binder. There was no daughter left to silence. There was only the record, the truth, and the winter gala where Veyra was already planning to be crowned. By the time the founders' winter gala invitation arrived, the red binder was too thick to close. It was no longer in my office at Blue Ridge Packaging. It was locked inside the drawer of my home office because I did not trust the company walls anymore. The invitation came on cream card stock with a blue mountain border. Maribel had chosen it. She loved anything that made a family decision look clean and graceful. The card said, "Derek and Maribel Rusk request the honor of your presence at the Founders Winter Gala, an evening to celebrate legacy, leadership, and the future of Blue Ridge Packaging and Fixtures. A special announcement will be made." I stood in my kitchen and read those words twice. Legacy, leadership, future. 3 beautiful words covering one ugly truth. My father was going to hand the company to Veyra in public, and he was going to do it before anyone could question what she had done in private. The folder from my father's office had changed everything. Until then, I had been building a file against Veyra. Crownline Market Works, the forged approvals, the missing safety reports, and the fake repair records. But my father's email made the damage deeper. Keep Elowen out of the Crownline accounts until after the gala. Once the title is yours, she will not have standing to challenge brand-side decisions. He had not written those words in panic. He had written them like a business plan. Calm. Clear. Protective of the wrong person. My father had not simply failed to see the truth. He had helped hide it until Veyra could wear the crown. I spent the next 2 weeks building the final report. I called it Blue Ridge Packaging Internal Risk Report, Crownline Matter. I kept the title clean and boring because the truth did not need drama. Inside, I placed everything in order. Crownline's payments, the Knoxville mailbox address, the empty website, the missing delivery records, the forged approvals, the login from Veyra's office, my proof that I was at Mission Hospital when one approval was entered, Warehouse 3, Jory Pell's injury, Nola's saved complaints, the false repair ticket, Maribel's foundation connection, the money moved from repair budgets into brand expenses. Then my father's email. I did not explain that page. I did not need to. His own words were enough. Then I found Brecken Yost. Until then, he had been only a name behind Crown Line Market Works. A vendor owner, a signature, a bank account. One night, while checking photos from one of Veyra's charity events, I saw him standing with her near a side hallway. His hand was around her wrist, and her face was turned toward him in a way that was not business. After that, I searched deeper. Crown Line had billed Blue Ridge for a brand strategy retreat at a mountain hotel outside Hendersonville. The receipt showed 1 suite, room service, wine, spa charges, and no meeting room. Veyra had approved it. Brecken had billed it through Crown Line. Blue Ridge had paid for it. They were not just stealing from the company. They were using the company to fund their private life. Maribel gave me one more piece without meaning to. 3 days before the gala, she sent me a message. Your father's heart cannot take conflict right now. Let Veyra have this moment. Please do not make the evening uncomfortable. At first, guilt touched me because my father did have blood pressure problems. But later that day, Nola found a board memo in the gala packet. Maribel had used his health as a reason to push a fast leadership transition. The doctor's note only said my father should reduce stress and avoid too much travel. It did not say he needed to hand the company to Veyra. Maribel had turned a medical note into a weapon. I added her text, the memo, and the doctor's note to the report. The night before the gala, Thorne and I sat at the kitchen table with the laptop open between us. The final report was 46 pages. Not wild, not emotional, just clean proof. The email was ready. The recipients were the board emergency review address, Orson Tabb, the company attorney, the bank compliance officer, the insurance fraud examiner, and the state labor safety contact. I did not send it to the press. I did not send it to every employee. I was not trying to burn Blue Ridge to the ground. I was trying to stop the people who were already setting fires behind closed doors. Thorne read the email quietly, then looked at me. This is clean, he said. I said, it does not feel clean. He touched my hand. That is because they made it personal. You are keeping it documented. I could have sent the report that night, but I did not. If I sent it early, they could cancel the announcement and turn the whole thing into a private family issue. My father was too good at controlling rooms. Veyra was too good at crying in the right light. Maribel was too good at making silence sound like peace. So I waited. They had chosen the stage. They had chosen the guests, the lights, the speech, and the public crown. I only chose the moment when the truth would enter the room. Thorne understood. He did not tell me to stop. He only asked, "Are you ready?" I looked at the draft email, the report attached, and the small send button waiting on the screen. I was ready, the day they used my name, I said. The next evening, the Alder Hall Conservatory looked beautiful in the cold. Winter lights wrapped around the trees outside. Blue and silver fabric hung from the glass ceiling. The company logo glowed behind the stage. Employees sat with their families. Board members, bankers, vendors, local officials, and reporters filled the room. Veyra wore a white suit with her silver crown pin near her shoulder. She looked perfect, polished, and ready to be admired. Maribel stood beside her in deep blue, smiling like the future had finally chosen her daughter. My father wore a dark suit and a silver tie. He looked proud, tired, and completely committed to the mistake he was about to make. I walked in with Thorne, wearing a dark green dress and a black coat. My phone was in my clutch. The email was saved as a draft. The report was attached. Nothing about me looked dangerous. That was the point. Dinner was served at 7. Speeches began at 8. My father stood under the lights and told the old story. the rented cutter, the used truck, the first 4 workers, the first big client, the growth, the legacy. I had heard that speech my whole life, but that night, every line felt different. Then he thanked Maribel for helping him think bigger. He thanked Veyra for bringing new energy into the company. And then he looked toward me for one small second. Elowen has always kept the machine running, he said. People turned to me and gave polite smiles. I felt Thorne's hand under the table. My father continued, but Veyra understands where the machine should go. The room clapped. That sentence reduced my years of work to maintenance and lifted Veyra's performance into vision. Then he raised his glass and said, "Tonight, with pride and full confidence, I am naming Veyra Lorne Rusk Executive President of Blue Ridge Packaging and Fixtures. Over the next 6 months, she will lead this company into its next chapter." The applause grew louder. Veyra stood, pressed one hand to her heart, and walked to the stage. Her crown pin caught the light with every step. My father kissed her cheek and gave her the microphone. She looked out at the room with soft eyes and a perfect smile. "Thank you for trusting me," she said. "This company is not only about products, it is about people. It is about families. It is about promises. I promise to protect every worker, every family, and every promise this company was built on." That was the line. I looked at Jory Pell's healed arm. I looked at Nola's still face. I looked at the stage where Veyra was lying in front of the workers whose safety money had been moved into fake brand invoices. Then I opened my clutch. The time on my phone was 9:16 p.m. I had chosen 9:17 for a reason. The first missing Warehouse 3 complaint had been submitted at 9:17 a.m. and later erased from the system. They had erased 9:17 once. I was going to give it back to them. Thorne leaned close and asked, "Are you ready?" I opened the draft. 46 pages. Dates, invoices, forged approvals, missing safety reports, my father's email, Maribel's memo, the hotel receipt, the photo of Veyra and Brecken, and the recommendation to freeze the leadership transition pending investigation. At 9:17, I pressed send. The button disappeared. A loading circle turned once, twice, 3 times. Then the screen changed. Message sent. I locked the phone and placed it back in my clutch. I thought I would shake, but I did not. I felt quiet, almost empty, like the storm had finally left my body and entered the room. For a few minutes, nothing happened. Veyra finished her speech. People clapped. My father hugged her again. The band started playing. Waiters moved between tables. My father smiled like the hard part was over. He did not know it had just begun. At 9:23, Orson Tabb looked at his phone. He did not panic. He simply stopped moving. Then he looked across the room and found me. I held his gaze. At 9:25, the company attorney, Lennox Price, left his table and stepped into the hallway with his phone pressed to his ear. At 9:27, the bank compliance officer followed him. At 9:29, Orson joined them. 3 important people moving to the same hallway was not an accident. It was the first crack. My father noticed a minute later. Lennox returned and whispered into his ear. My father's smile dropped. He looked at Lennox's phone, then at Orson, then across the room at me. I did not look away. Veyra noticed next. Her eyes followed my father's stare. She looked at me, then at Lennox, then at the bank officer, then at Orson. Her smile began to break. Maribel moved toward my father quickly, her face still controlled, but her hands tight around her clutch. The band was still playing, but the room had changed. People felt it before anyone explained it. Then, at 9:36, the music stopped. Conversations fell apart. Forks lowered. Chairs shifted. Orson spoke first, not loudly, but clearly enough. "Derek, the board needs to pause this transition immediately." Veyra stepped forward. "Excuse me?" My father said. "Not here." Orson looked around the hall and then back at him. "You made it here." Those 4 words landed harder than shouting. My father had chosen the stage, the guests, the press, the speech, and the applause. He wanted witnesses for Veyra's crown. Now the witnesses were still there. Lennox touched my father's arm and spoke quietly. My father walked back to the stage. He looked older than he had 20 minutes before. He picked up the microphone. "I need everyone's attention for a brief clarification," he said. Even then, he wanted a soft word. "Due to a compliance matter that has just been brought to the attention of the board and legal counsel, tonight's leadership transition will be paused pending immediate review." Nobody clapped. Nobody moved. Veyra stood below the stage, one hand near her crown pin. "What compliance matter?" she asked. My father said, "Veyra, not now." Her voice rose. "You just announced me in front of everyone. You cannot pause my title because of some paperwork." Some paperwork. That was what she called it. Missing safety reports. Forged approvals. Fake invoices. A worker's injury. My name used as cover. Some paperwork. Orson looked at her and said, "You may want to stop speaking until you have counsel." That was when the room understood this was not a small problem. Board members checked their phones. Employees looked at each other. The reporters near the back started writing. Jory's wife covered her mouth. Nola looked down at the table, and I saw her shoulders drop with relief. Veyra turned and walked toward me with a smile that belonged to someone pretending she was still in control. "Elowen," she said quietly. "What did you do?" I stood. Not fast. Not dramatic. Just stood. "I kept records." Her eyes sharpened. "You will look jealous," I said. "Not when they read the invoices." For the first time that night, real fear crossed her face. She looked toward my father, but he was busy with Lennox. She looked toward Maribel, but Maribel was staring at her own phone. Then Veyra's silver crown pin slipped from her jacket. Maybe her hand had touched it too many times. Maybe the fabric pulled wrong. It fell between us and hit the floor with one small metal click. No crash. No dramatic sound. Just a tiny crown on the floor in a room full of people who had stopped believing the performance. Nobody picked it up. The gala ended without anyone saying it was over. Guests reached for coats. Employees whispered in small groups. Vendors avoided eye contact. The reporters stayed longer than everyone else, which told me enough. Veyra tried to enter the side room where my father, Lennox, Orson, the bank officer, and 2 board members were meeting, but she was stopped at the door. Maribel stood near the stage, her face smooth and her hands shaking. Thorne brought me my coat and asked, "Are you okay?" I said, "No, but I am standing." He nodded. "That counts." We were almost at the coat room when my father came out of the side hallway. "Elowen," he said. His voice was smaller now. The stage voice was gone. I stopped, and Thorne stayed beside me. My father walked toward me and said, "You should have come to me." I looked at him for a long second. I did. His brow tightened. "No, you did not." I said, "I came to you for years, with repair warnings, budget concerns, questions about Veyra's department. Every time you called it attitude, jealousy, or fear of change." He looked away. I stepped closer and lowered my voice. "You told her to keep me out of the Crown Line accounts." His eyes came back to mine. Not surprise, recognition. He said, I was trying to protect the company. I said, no. You were trying to protect the story you liked. That hurt him because it was true. He had loved the story where Veyra was graceful and modern, Maribel was peace, and I was useful, but difficult. He loved that story so much that he ignored the floor cracking under it. She said you were trying to undermine her, he said quietly. I answered, she used my initials on fake approvals. He said, I did not know that part. I said, but you knew there was something to hide. He had no answer. Maribel appeared behind him with her coat over one arm. Even now, her voice came out soft. Do not turn pain into drama, Elowen. For a moment, I almost smiled. After everything, she still had only that one tool. I turned toward her and said, it was never drama, Maribel. It was evidence. She stared at me. No answer came. No smooth correction. No gentle guilt. For the first time since I had known her, Maribel had nothing to wrap around the truth. Behind her, Veyra was crying near the hallway. Not sad tears. Angry tears. Her phone lit up twice with Brecken Yost's name. She declined both calls. The next morning, Blue Ridge Packaging opened under emergency review. By noon, Veyra's access badge was disabled. Crownline Market Works was placed under contract suspension. The bank froze all new brand growth draw requests until the compliance review was complete. The insurance fraud examiner requested the Warehouse 3 files. The State Labor Safety Office opened an inquiry into the missing complaints and false repair ticket. By afternoon, the company attorney sent a memo to leadership. All transition activity paused until further notice. My father took a temporary leave, described publicly as a health and governance pause. Maribel resigned from the Family Foundation Board after her memo became part of the review. Veyra was suspended pending investigation. Her office was locked. The crown pin was found later under one of the tables and placed in lost and found. Nobody claimed it. The first week was chaos, but the company did not collapse. That mattered to me. I had never wanted Blue Ridge to die. I wanted it to stop lying. Brecken Yost tried to claim Crownline had delivered every service listed on the invoices. That did not last. Nola had copies of delivery logs. Jory gave a statement about the pallet lift. The hotel receipt and the photo from Greenville made the story even harder to deny. Crownline's invoices had the same patterns, the same vague language, and the same missing proof. Lies look strong when no one checks them. Once someone starts reading carefully, they become very small. The board asked me to serve as interim chief operating officer during the review. I accepted with one condition: full vendor audit, full safety audit, and no family member involved in either process. Orson supported it. The bank supported it. The board voted yes. My first act was not a speech. It was a repair order. Warehouse 3 got a new pallet lift, new safety lights, and an outside inspection team. Jory received full medical compensation and paid recovery time. The missing complaints were restored to the record. Nola was promoted to Employee Relations Director. When I told her, she cried for about 5 seconds, wiped her face, and asked when we were fixing the break room policy. Veyra called me once. I let it go to voicemail. Her message was cold. You ruined everything because you could not stand seeing me win. I listened once and deleted it. She still did not understand. Winning was never the problem. Lying was. Stealing was. Putting workers at risk was. Using my name to cover it was. If she had truly earned the title, I would have hated it privately and survived. But she had not earned it. She had decorated theft and called it vision. My father sent a letter 2 weeks later. Not an email. A handwritten letter on the thick white paper. I let it sit on the kitchen counter until after dinner. When I opened it, there were only 3 sentences. I mistook silence for weakness. I mistook polish for leadership. I am sorry. I read it twice. I did not cry. I did not call him. I did not forgive him just because paper asked me to. But I did not throw it away either. Some apologies are not doors. They are only proof that someone has finally found the hallway. By spring, Blue Ridge packaging was still standing. Payroll cleared. Clients stayed. Vendors were reviewed and replaced. Safety reports became harder to erase. Every large approval required 2-person verification. Warehouse supervisors received direct reporting access outside brand budgets. The company became less pretty on paper and more honest in practice. I would take that trade every time. One morning in April, I walked through Warehouse 3 after the new lift had been installed. The floor was clean. The warning lights worked. The service log was attached to the machine in a clear sleeve, signed by the outside inspector and the warehouse supervisor, not by a ghost version of me at 9:42 at night. Jory Pell was back on shift. He gave me a small nod and said, "Run smooth now." I said, "That is the idea." Then he looked at me and said, "Thank you for not letting them bury it." I only nodded, because some gratitude is too heavy to answer quickly. That evening, I went home before dark for the first time in weeks. Thorne was on the porch, fixing the old light by the front door. It had flickered all winter, but we had both been too tired to care. He climbed down, flipped the switch, and warm yellow light filled the porch. Nothing grand, nothing expensive, just a small, honest light doing exactly what it was supposed to do. Later, we sat outside with coffee. The mountains were dark beyond the trees. My phone was inside the house. No draft waiting. No file open. No button to press. For the first time in months, my hands felt empty in a peaceful way. I thought about my father's letter. I thought about Veyra's crown pin in a lost and found box. I thought about Maribel's sentence, finally powerless. I thought about the girl I used to be, sitting in my father's office after school, drawing mountains on packing lists and waiting for him to see me clearly. Maybe he did now. Maybe he did not. But I had stopped needing his eyes to prove my worth. People think being chosen is the highest form of love. I used to think that too. I thought if I worked hard enough, stayed late enough, fixed enough problems, and carried enough weight, my father would finally turn toward me in a room full of people and say, "This is the one who earned it." But sometimes the most important moment is not when someone chooses you. Sometimes it is when they do not, and you finally choose yourself. My dad handed his company to my stepsister. He gave her the stage, the title, the applause, and a crown made from everyone else's silence. But he forgot one thing. A crown built on lies does not need a sword to fall. Sometimes all it takes is one woman, one clean record, and the proof everyone thought she was too quiet to keep. The end. Commentary, lessons, and story explanation. Now let's talk about this story, because this is not only a story about a company, a father, and a stepsister. This is a story about being unseen for years. It is about doing the real work while someone else receives the spotlight. It is about family pressure, quiet manipulation, fake loyalty, and the kind of revenge that does not come from shouting. It comes from patience, proof, and truth. Elowen's story begins with a very painful moment. Her father stands in front of everyone and gives the company to Veyra, her stepsister. And the pain is not only that Veyra gets the title. The real pain is that Elowen had given years of her life to that company. She had worked on the factory floor. She had learned the system from the inside. She knew the workers, the machines, the schedules, the safety problems, the clients, and the real pressure of running the business. She was not just a daughter standing outside the company asking for power. She was already carrying the company. But her father only saw her as useful. He did not see her as the future. That is one of the most important emotional points in the story. Sometimes people use your strength but never respect it. They call you reliable, but they never call you worthy. They call you responsible, but they do not give you authority. They come to you when something breaks, but they do not celebrate you when something succeeds. And that is exactly what happened to Elowen. She was allowed to fix the problems, but she was not allowed to wear the crown. Veyra, on the other hand, understood image. She understood how to look graceful, how to smile in public, how to say the right words, and how to stand close to power. She did not understand the company the way Elowen did, but she understood how to impress Derek. This is very real in many families and workplaces. Sometimes the person who knows how to perform confidence gets more attention than the person who actually does the work. Veyra knew how to look like leadership. Elowen knew how to practice leadership, and that difference matters. Real leadership is not only speeches, beautiful clothes, or big words about vision. Real leadership is responsibility. It is knowing what happens when a machine fails. It is caring when workers get hurt. It is checking if money is going where it should go. It is asking uncomfortable questions before a small problem becomes a disaster. Veyra wanted the title without the weight. Elowen carried the weight without the title. Now let's talk about Derek, the father. He is not written as a simple villain. That is what makes the story stronger. He is not just evil for no reason. He built the company. He worked hard. He had pride. But his pride became dangerous. He had already created a story in his mind. In that story, Veyra was graceful and modern. Elowen was difficult and too serious. Maribel was calm and peaceful. He loved that story so much that he stopped looking at the facts. This is a very strong lesson. When people love a story more than the truth, they become blind. Derek did not want to see that Elowen was the real backbone of the company. He did not want to see that Veyra was not ready. He did not want to see the warning signs around Crown Line. And when Elowen started asking questions, he did not protect the company. He protected the image he wanted to believe. That is why the email was such a powerful turning point. When Elowen found the message from her father telling Veyra to keep her away from the Crown Line accounts until after the gala, everything changed. Before that, maybe she could still believe that her father was just blind. Maybe unfair. Maybe manipulated. But after that email, she understood that he knew enough to hide something. He may not have known every detail, but he knew there was something Elowen might find. And instead of opening the door to truth, he tried to close it. That moment is heartbreaking because Elowen loses something deeper than a title. She loses the last soft hope that her father was only mistaken. She realizes he made a choice. And when someone chooses to silence you because your truth is inconvenient, that is not love. That is control. Now let's discuss Maribel. Maribel is very important in this story because she does not scream, threaten, or attack directly. Her weapon is softness. She says, "Do not turn pain into drama, Elowen." At first, this line sounds calm. It even sounds caring. But it is not caring. It is a way to shut Elowen down. It tells her that if she speaks, she is emotional. If she questions something, she is dramatic. If she brings facts, she is creating conflict. That kind of manipulation can be very powerful because it makes the victim doubt herself. Many people face this in real life. Maybe in families, maybe in workplaces, maybe in relationships. Someone does something wrong, but when you react, they call you dramatic. They do not focus on the wrong action. They focus on your response. That is how they avoid responsibility. Maribel did that again and again. She tried to make Elowen's evidence look like pain. She tried to make truth look like drama. That is why Elowen's final response is so satisfying. It was never drama, Maribel. It was evidence. This line is powerful because it breaks the manipulation. Elowen does not defend her feelings. She does not beg Maribel to understand. She simply names the truth. It was evidence, not jealousy, not pain, not drama. Evidence. This is one of the biggest lessons from the story. When people try to make you feel ashamed for noticing the truth, do not get lost in defending your emotions. Bring the facts back to the center. Stay calm. Stay clear. Let the truth stand. Now let's talk about Veyra's crown. The silver crown pin is a small object, but it carries a lot of meaning. It represents the public image Veyra wanted. She wanted to be seen as the future, the graceful leader, the chosen daughter. She wore that crown pin like a promise that the company was already hers. But the important thing is this. Her crown was not built on achievement. It was built on silence. It was built on fake invoices, missing safety reports, forged approvals, and people looking the other way. So when the crown pin falls to the floor at the gala, that is not just a small accident. It is a symbol. It shows that her image has fallen. The crown does not break loudly. It makes only a small metal click. That is important. Sometimes a fake image does not fall with a dramatic explosion. Sometimes it falls quietly when the truth finally enters the room. Nobody picks up the crown because nobody believes the performance anymore. This moment also shows the beauty of quiet revenge. Elowen does not slap Veyra. She does not scream. She does not create a public scene for attention. She simply sends the report. Then she stands there while the truth does the work. That's what makes her powerful. Her revenge is clean. Her revenge is not chaos. It is accountability. Now let's explain the proof and why it matters so much. Elowen's proof is not one random document. It is a pattern. That is very important. One mistake can be explained away. One missing record can be called an accident. One strange invoice can be blamed on confusion. But when you have many documents showing the same pattern, the truth becomes harder to hide. Elowen had invoices, payment records, vendor details, login records, safety complaints, a false repair ticket, a hotel receipt, a photo, Maribel's memo, and her father's email. That is why her file was strong. She did not move too early. She waited until the record could speak clearly. This teaches us another lesson. If you are dealing with a serious problem, do not react only from emotion. Emotion is real, but proof protects you. Elowen was hurt, but she did not only say, "They are unfair." She documented what was happening. She checked dates. She saved records. She stayed inside what she was allowed to access. She kept the file clean. That is why, when the time came, nobody could easily dismiss her. The warehouse. 3 incident adds another emotional layer. This story is not only about a woman losing a title. If it were only about a title, some people might say, maybe she is jealous. But when Jory almost gets hurt because safety money is being hidden behind fake repairs, the story becomes bigger. This is about human safety, workers' lives, families, responsibility. Veyra's actions were not just selfish. They were dangerous. And Derek's silence was not just unfair. It was harmful. This is why Elowen's revenge feels justified. She is not trying to destroy Veyra because Veyra got attention. She is stopping something dangerous. She is protecting workers. She is protecting the company from a deeper collapse. She is protecting her own name because her initials were forged. She is not only fighting for herself, she is fighting for the truth of the whole company. Thorn's role is also very important. He does not take over the story. He does not tell Elowen what to feel. He does not push her into revenge. He supports her with calm advice. He tells her to protect herself, build clean proof, and not fight in a room where the family controls the story. This is the kind of support that matters. Good support does not make you smaller. It helps you stand straighter. Thorn gives Elowen space, but he also gives her clarity. Orson's role is also strong. He represents the outside world of rules, documents, and accountability. Families can twist emotions. They can rewrite memories. They can say, you are jealous, or you are difficult, or you are making drama. But documents are harder to twist. Orson tells Elowen to build the record cleanly. That advice saves her. It also gives the story a more realistic feeling. She is not just taking revenge with emotion. She is moving through a system. Nola's role is emotional in a quiet way. She is not rich. She is not powerful. She is not on stage. But she is one of the people who knows the real company. She sees what others ignore. She keeps copies of the missing complaints because something feels wrong. And when she gives those papers to Elowen, she is choosing truth over fear. Nola's line, "Because you are the one who shows up when something breaks," is one of the most emotional lines in the story. It shows that the workers already knew who the real leader was. That is another lesson. Sometimes the people at the top do not see your value, but the people who depend on you do. The workers knew Elowen showed up. They knew she cared. They knew she fixed things. The title did not make her a leader. Her actions had already done that. Now let's talk about the timing of the revenge. Elowen sends the report at 9:17 p.m. This timing is not random. It connects to the first missing Warehouse 3 complaint that was filed at 9:17 a.m. and erased. This is beautiful storytelling because it gives the revenge moment meaning. She is not only pressing send, she is restoring something that was erased. The company tried to delete the warning. She brings it back. This tells us something powerful. Truth may be delayed, but it is not always destroyed. Someone may erase a report, hide an email, bury a complaint, or silence a worker. But if one person keeps the record, truth can return. And when it returns, it can return at the exact moment people thought they had won. The gala scene is powerful because the villains choose their own stage. This is very important. Elowen does not create the public event. She does not drag everyone into a room. Derek, Maribel, and Veyra choose the gala. They choose the lights, the music, the guests, the press, and the announcement. They want public applause. They want witnesses for Veyra's crown. So when the truth arrives in the same room, it feels fair. They wanted the stage. They got the stage. Orson's line, "You made it here," is a key line. Derek says, "Not here," because he wants to move the truth back into private shadows. But Orson reminds him that he made the announcement public. If he can crown Veyra in front of everyone, then he cannot complain when the truth interrupts the ceremony. That is a strong justice moment. The line, "Some paperwork," is also important. Veyra calls it paperwork because she wants to make it sound small. But paperwork is where many truths live. Invoices are paperwork. Safety reports are paperwork. approval logs or paperwork, medical records, contracts, bank transfers, emails, memos, complaints, all paperwork. People who do wrong often dismiss documents until those documents expose them. Then suddenly paperwork becomes dangerous. This story also teaches us about fake confidence. Veyra looked confident as long as nobody questioned her. She smiled as long as the room believed her. But the moment the report reached the board, her confidence began to break. This shows that fake confidence depends on control. Real confidence can stand in truth. Fake confidence needs silence. Elowen's confidence is different. She is not loud. She is not showing off. She is not trying to look powerful. But when Veyra asks, "What did you do?" Elowen says, "I kept records." That is such a simple line, but it is very strong. It tells us who Elowen really is. She does not need a dramatic speech. She kept the truth. That was enough. Now let's talk about the father-daughter confrontation. This is one of the most emotional parts because Derek says, "You should have come to me." This line is common in families and workplaces when the truth comes out. The person in power acts surprised and says, "Why did you not tell me?" But Elowen did tell him, in many ways, for years. She brought repair warnings, budget concerns, questions about Veyra's department. But he did not want to hear them. So when he says, "You should have come to me," Elowen reminds him that she had already tried. He ignored her because her truth did not fit his story. This is a serious lesson. Listening is not only hearing words. Listening means taking someone seriously before disaster happens. If you only listen after proof reaches a lawyer, a bank, or a board, then you did not really respect the person. You respected the consequences. Elowen's line, "You were trying to protect the story you liked," is one of the deepest lines in the story. Derek was not protecting the company. He was protecting his preferred version of reality. In that version, Veyra was the perfect future. Maribel was the calm wife. Elowen was the difficult but useful daughter. Crownline was a brand partner. The gala was a celebration. But the report destroyed that story. It showed what was underneath. This happens in real life too. Families create roles. One child is the responsible one. One child is the golden one. One person is called dramatic. One person is protected. One person is blamed. And once those roles are created, it becomes very hard to change them. Elowen was trapped in the role of the useful daughter. Veyra was placed in the role of the graceful future. The revenge of this story is not only that Veyra loses the title. The real revenge is that the roles break. Everyone has to see who was actually doing the work and who was actually causing the damage. The aftermath is also important because the company does not collapse. This shows that Elowen was never trying to destroy Blue Ridge. She wanted to save it. The board pauses the transition. Veyra is suspended. Crownline is investigated. The bank freezes certain requests. The safety office opens an inquiry. Warehouse 3 gets new equipment. Jory receives support. Nola is promoted. The company becomes more honest and safer. This is the best kind of revenge in a story like this. Not revenge that leaves ashes. Revenge that clears the smoke. Elowen becoming interim, COO, is also meaningful. She does not get the role because she begged for it. She gets it because the truth shows she was already the person protecting the company. This is very satisfying. The title finally catches up to the work. She was already leading in action. Now the company has to recognize it officially. Veyra's voicemail shows that she still does not understand. She says Elowen ruined everything because she could not stand seeing her win. That line tells us Veyra has learned nothing. She still sees the story as competition, not accountability. She thinks Elowen's problem was jealousy, but Elowen knows the real issue was lying, stealing, risking workers, and using her name to hide it. This difference matters. People who do wrong often reduce everything to jealousy because it protects their ego. If they can say, "You are just jealous," they do not have to say, "I was wrong. Derek's letter is short, but it matters. I mistook silence for weakness. I mistook polish for leadership. I am sorry." This is not a full repair. It does not erase the damage. It does not give Elowen back the years when he failed to see her, but it shows that he finally understands something. Elowen does not immediately forgive him, and that is healthy. Forgiveness should not be forced just because someone apologizes. An apology is a beginning, not a finish line. The line, "Some apologies are not doors. They are only proof that someone has finally found the hallway," is a beautiful emotional idea. It means Derek's apology does not automatically open the relationship again. It only shows that he has started moving in the right direction. Elowen still gets to decide what happens next. That is a boundary. And boundaries are one of the biggest lessons of this story. The peaceful ending on the porch is important because revenge stories need emotional rest. If the story ended only with exposure, it would feel sharp, but not complete. The porch light gives a quiet symbol. All winter, the light was flickering, just like Elowen's family truth was flickering. By the end, Thorn fixes it. Warm light fills the porch. It is not grand. It is not a stage. It is not a crown. It is simple, honest, and peaceful. That is the life Elowen earns after carrying so much. The ending tells us that being chosen by others is not the highest form of worth. Elowen spent years hoping her father would choose her publicly. She thought if she worked hard enough, he would finally say, "This is the one who earned it." But in the end, she learns something better. She learns to choose herself. She learns that her value does not depend on her father's eyes, Veyra's crown, or Maribel's approval. Now let's take the life lessons clearly. The first lesson is, do not confuse image with leadership. Veyra looked like a leader, but she did not act like one. Elowen looked quiet, but she carried responsibility. In life, we should be careful not to trust only the person who speaks well, dresses well, or looks confident. Look at what they do when nobody is clapping. Look at how they treat workers, money, safety, and truth. The second lesson is, keep records when something feels wrong. Elowen did not win because she was louder. She won because she documented everything. In serious situations, memory is not enough. People can deny your memory. They can twist conversations. They can call you dramatic. But dates, emails, invoices, and reports are harder to dismiss. Calm proof is powerful. The third lesson is, when someone calls your truth drama, do not give up too quickly. Maribel tried to shame Elowen into silence by calling her pain drama, but Elowen learned that truth does not become drama just because someone is uncomfortable hearing it. Sometimes people call you dramatic because they benefit from your silence. The fourth lesson is, family does not give anyone permission to harm you. Derek was Elowen's father, Veyra was her stepsister, Maribel was her stepmother, but family titles did not make their actions acceptable. Love and loyalty should not require you to ignore fraud, danger, or disrespect. You can love someone and still hold them accountable. You can be part of a family and still protect yourself. The fifth lesson is, quiet people are not weak. Elowen was quiet for months, but she was not passive. She was watching, checking, saving, and preparing. Some people mistake silence for fear. But sometimes silence is discipline. Sometimes silence means the person is building something stronger than an argument. The sixth lesson is the truth needs timing. Elowen did not expose everything the first day she found one invoice. She waited until she had a complete pattern. This does not mean waiting forever. It means being strategic. She chose the right people, the right proof, and the right moment. That is why the truth had impact. The seventh lesson is, do not let people use your name to cover their mistakes. Veyra used Elowen's initials on fake approvals. That is a deep betrayal because it could have made Elowen responsible for something she did not do. In life, protecting your name matters. Your name is connected to your work, your reputation, and your future. If someone is using your name wrongly, take it seriously. The eighth lesson is, real revenge is not always destruction. In this story, revenge is connected to repair. Elowen exposes the fraud, but then she fixes the company. She gets new safety systems. She protects workers. She reviews vendors. She makes the company better. That is why her revenge feels mature. It is not revenge for ego. It is revenge that creates justice. The ninth lesson is, not everyone who apologizes deserves immediate access to your life. Derek apologizes, but Elowen does not run back to him. She reads the letter and keeps her boundary. This is important. Healing takes time. Trust takes longer than regret. A person can be sorry and still need to prove change. The 10th lesson is, sometimes the stage people use to erase you becomes the stage where truth reveals you. Veyra wanted the gala to become her crown moment. Derek wanted public applause. Maribel wanted a clean family picture. But the same room became the place where their lies broke. That is powerful. If someone creates a stage from lies, truth can still walk in. So what is the main message of this story? The main message is that your value does not disappear just because someone refuses to see it. Elowen's father did not choose her. That hurt. But his choice did not change the truth. She was still capable. She was still smart. She was still the one who understood the company. She was still the one who protected people. The crown went to Veyra, but the responsibility had always been with Elowen. And maybe that is why the final line feels so strong. My dad handed his company to my stepsister. He gave her the stage, the title, the applause, and a crown made from everyone else's silence. But a crown built on lies does not need a sword to fall. Sometimes all it takes is one woman, one clean record, and the proof everyone thought she was too quiet to keep. That is the power of this story. It reminds us that truth may be quiet, but it is not weak. It may take time, but it can still arrive. And when it arrives with proof, even the loudest applause can stop.